Good morning, members. It is the appointed time. I call to order this meeting. Welcome to this meeting. We have a quorum, and it is time. Meeting begins. Now, we have 3 items for discussion today, so the scheduled end time is 1 o'clock. Item 1, information paper issued since last meeting. As at the meeting on the 27th of February, 2 information papers have been issued. Please refer to item 1 for the specifics. Now, concerning the letter sent by Mr. Yim Kong proposing to include the item one-stop pilotage in the ports of the GBA in the list of outstanding items for discussion. The letter being CB brackets 4151 2023 brackets 01. I seek members' views. If there are no objections, I propose the suggestion approved. Thank you. Items for discussions for the next meeting. The next regular meeting is scheduled on the 24th of April this year. We will discuss the following 2 items proposed by the administration. A, legislative amendments to implement the latest requirements of the International Maritime Organization. 2, management of typhoon shelters and sheltered anchorages. Members, do you have any views concerning the proposed items for discussion? If not, I invite your approval. Thank you. Item 3, implementation of the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. There are 2 papers, CB brackets 4193 2023 02, papers provided by the administration, and CB brackets 4193 brackets 03, background brief. Now, let's invite the administration to come in. Those of you who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. I welcome Dr. Bernard Chan, the Undersecretary for Commerce and Economic Development, and Ms. Candy Lau, Deputy Secretary, for joining us. We also have from the CNED, Mr. Mark Wu, Assistant Commissioner, and Mr. Philip Lee, Head of Trade Controls, and also from the Office of the Communications Authority, Mr. Sidney Zhang, Assistant Director, and Mr. Eddie Ng, Head of Market and Competition. Now, may I refer you to ROP 83A. If you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest concerning the items for discussion today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. Now, an official welcome to the administration. I invite the representative to give us a brief introduction. Good morning. Today, together with the CNED and the author, I would like to report to you the implementation details of the TDO. The Trade Descriptions Ordinance covered both goods and services and prohibits unfair trade practices, including false trade descriptions, misleading omissions, aggressive commercial practices, bait advertising, bait and switch, and wrongly accepting payments. These are applicable to both physical and online traders. In terms of enforcement, our enforcement agencies adopt a free-from approach through enforcement, compliance, promotion, and publicity to protect consumer rights and interests. Now, since its implementation in 2013, as of February, we have dealt with some 20,000 complaints from the CNED and completed some 300 prosecution cases. The conviction rate is over 90% involving different trades. We believe that with a step-up enforcement plus heavier sentences from courts, it will serve a deterrent sentence. Now, the district court has rendered a sentence in last November concerning a fitness malpractice concerned with aggressive commercial practices, and 27-month sentence was handed down to a fitness coach. It is the heaviest sentence so far. Now, with more online shopping, the prohibition on unfair trade practice also apply to online shopping. Besides, on following up on complaints, the CNED would, through evidence gathering and monitoring, monitor online trading tools, and prosecutions would be taken forward. If cases are beyond the purview of the CNED, referral would be made to other agencies. And also the Consumers Council has also stepped up on education for consumers and remind them of any pitfalls. Members, we will pay close attention to the relevant numbers of complaints and enforcement actions taken to monitor the trend of unfair trade practice and formulate appropriate strategies to protect consumers' rights and interests. Now, me and my team will be happy to take questions. Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary. Now, the floor is open. We have quite a few agenda items today, so I will keep to the 4 minutes time limit. If there is still time, after that, I will give you a second round. Now, these are the members: Mr. Jimmy Ng, Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong, Peter Shiu, Frankie Yik, and Mr. Stephen Ho. Let's begin. Mr. Stephen Ho, sorry, I misread. I mispronounced your name. It's a big deal. Mr. Jimmy Ng, thank you, Chair. Now, the Trade Descriptions Ordinance has been introduced since 2013. Remarkable results have been achieved. Consumers' rights have been protected. According to the paper, since 2013, 10 years on, amounted to 2,322 detailed investigations. There are advisory letters or warning letters sent. Some 600 cases were prosecuted successfully. Now, in terms of written undertaking, only 17 underwritten taking were given over the 10 years. Now, it is similar with the legislation on competition. Now, can the traders themselves offer to write an undertaking in lieu of prosecution, or does the Secretary for Justice have to be involved? Now, if there are further unfair trade practices after a written undertaking has been given and it has been proven, then will the first offense be considered together in considering the sentence for the second offense? Say, for example, consideration of suspended sentence and so on. CNED. Thank you. Now, since its implementation in 2013, there are 17 undertaking written. Please speak closer to the mic. Now, in terms of written undertaking, it has to be offered to us by the traders. We would not invite the traders to write an undertaking to us. So if that's offered by the traders, that an undertaking would be made that the offense will not be repeated, then we would seek legal advice from the DOJ. And if another offense is committed after the undertaking, then it would be part of the court's consideration in handing down a sentence. Now, since that is the case, there are only 15 cases. Maybe the traders are not very familiar with this option. In handling cases, are the traders being informed of this arrangement? We have conducted outreaching activities with the traders, and traders were briefed about the Trade Descriptions Ordinance, including the option to use written undertaking in lieu of prosecution. But that's not part of our publicity campaign or efforts. We are not offering this as a way out, and the DOJ may not be agreeable to the arrangement as well. Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong. Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 6 and 8 of the paper, enforcement strategy and the implementation progress. Now, since July 2013, after the amendment, as at the 28th of February 2024, 2023, the CNED, the Offshore, and the Consumer Council have received some complaints involving the possible breach of the ordinance. So these figures are 10-year figures. Now, what about the trend of the past few years? Was there a rising trend or a decreasing one? And what are the reasons? Now, the actions taken, including compliance, publicity, and education, and so on, there is a three-pronged approach. What is the result? And did you really improve consumers' rights protection? Thank you. Concerning the figures over the past 10 years, like Mr. Chen said, there is quite a huge number for CNED. Over the past 10 years, there were 72,000 cases. So half of them, some 34,000 cases, did not fall within the ambit of the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. So there is no information on those cases. For the 37,000 cases with preliminary evidence, they were consolidated into 2,322 detailed investigation cases, which were handled by the CNED. And among them, 1,050 of them were being followed up on, including written undertaking, warning letters, and 700 cases prosecuted with a 90% conviction rate. Now, 40% of the cases have been dealt with. The remaining 60% complaints were made by consumers to the law enforcement agencies and the CNED, and also the same complaints would be lodged with the Consumers Council. Over the past decade, every year there were some 30,000 complaints received. 60% of the cases were satisfactorily resolved after mediation by the Consumer Council. So in terms of warning, advice given, and mediation, more than 70 or 80% of cases were successfully resolved. My colleague, please. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Now, the three-pronged approach of the CNED, that is enforcement, compliance promotion, and publicity. On enforcement, we take a risk-based strategy. We are some 231 strong in terms of our establishment. So we would see whether the cases involve significant public interest. Say, for example, over the past 2 years, we have seen closures of companies, especially in the beautician industry and fitness center industry. Now, there are many people aggrieved, so significant public interests were involved, and we would take immediate action. For undesirable or unfair trade practices with particularly severe facts, including deceiving people of old age or people who are mentally challenged, we would take immediate action as well. Now, over the past few years, we had COVID and the Black Lives violence. There may be a concentration of different complaints over a certain year. So I would like to have a breakdown of the figures, and I would like to assess the trend. Now, a quick reply. In terms of the service industry, the overall trend is a downward one because of our enforcement efforts. Pre-2019, we received over 4,600 complaints. Now, with our publicity and promotion, last year the number has fallen to 2,076. So the result is real. So can I have a breakdown and the trend analysis after the meeting? Thank you.
Next, Mr. Peter Xu. Thank you. We have had 3 years of COVID, and then we are returning to normalcy. Now visitors are coming back to Hong Kong. Last month, there was a media story. There was a problem. A lady bought $110,000 of goods, and then there were problems. She felt deceived because of those units with the catty and tails, etc. That led to an uproar in the mainland. The customs became aware of the incident. So the customs reached out to the lady and reached out to the seller. The trader had to do a full refund to the buyer. This mainland visitor thanked us. She thanked customs for their swift action. I believe this message has also reached other people in the mainland. I wrote to the Commissioner for Customs, and the Commissioner responded with a personal letter indicating there would be resolute law enforcement actions. We have had 3 years of COVID. We're just started with the recovery. Tourists matter a lot to us. We need to tell good stories of Hong Kong. We need to sell people genuine goods. We have to show that there's no fraud, no deception. With the catty tails and all these units, we had more fraud cases like these in the past. We thank the customs for taking law enforcement action, but every case is one too many. Information is easily accessible nowadays. So for the customs, how can we do the publicity right so that mainland visitors, as soon as they have problems with the measurement units, tails/catty, can we give them a phone numbers to seek help? And for these unscrupulous traders, those who deceive visitors with the measurement units, what kind of penalties can we impose so that they cannot exploit such loopholes in the conversion unit measurements with catties versus tails, so as not to damage our image as a place welcoming visitors? I agree with Mr. Peter Xu. Our economy is just starting to recover. Mainland and overseas visitors are coming back here. We are a shopping paradise, and we need to safeguard this image. Customs has a rapid response force. They get a complaint, and then they send officers to the stores or the areas to handle the matter. They also send officers to tourist hotspots. They do inspections and hand out leaflets. The goal is to raise awareness among tourists of unfair trade practices here. We also do a compliance promotion and also emphasize the importance of doing honest business. And we also spread a message about smart consumption among tourists. My colleague will tell us more. I would like to stress once again that customs attaches great importance to consumer rights and also to the rights of visitors. First, on publicity. At the port boundary crossing facilities, we provide information about the rapid response force. We also work with China Travel Service, and we also work with the Culture and Tourism Ministry. On WeChat, we provide our hotlines to mainland visitors. On penalties for these unscrupulous traders, we receive a complaint. We know that visitors may be only here for a short stay. So within 24 hours, our officers take action. Last week, we made an arrest. This case involved a mainland visitor as a victim, so we take swift action. Next, Mr. Frankie Yik. I want to write on a point raised by Mr. Peter Xu. Normal travel has resumed with the mainland. You go to a visitor's area, you see those pharmacies. On Peking Road, you see many such stores selling medicines and stuff. I know the customs is taking action. They are alerting visitors to potential unfair practices. But how do we stop those criminals from operating their businesses? In the old days, there were restaurants. They would close down. and then they would apply for the government fund to pay the wages, and then under a different label, those businesses reopen. I believe we then had legislation preventing those directors from engaging in the same trade. So coming back here, you can impose a fine, but then the same operators go on carrying on their illicit business. Will there be stricter measures under the law to deal with those sorts of unscrupulous traders? Now, turning to paragraph 15 of the paper. Over the years, the customs received a number of complaints for online shopping. 1,824 complaints 2022, but only 5 cases saw prosecution, 5 convictions. So that's a very low percentage. Did we really get so few cases? I know not every complaint turns out to be substantiated. So just to clarify, is it a case where not many cases went unsubstantiated? Or if not, what's the reason? The law enforcement agencies take a risk-based approach for repeat offenders. As Mr. Frankie Yek was saying, or cases where the culprit showed a lack of remorse, we target those traders and impose strict penalties. For online shopping, the criminal prosecution hinges on the evidence. The percentage is indeed low for prosecution cases. Often, the victims take the same complaint to the Consumer Council. The Consumer Council engages in conciliation or mediation. In those cases, more than 60%, almost 70% of the cases were resolved through conciliation. So there is law enforcement and there's also conciliation. These are the ways we help consumers resolve the problem. I would like the government to think about this. How do we stop those criminals from carrying on their businesses, defrauding more people? Fines are imposed, arrests are made. Does the customs do sting operations? In Tsim Sha Tsui, people buy proprietary Chinese medicine products. Many visitors buy those goods. Does the customs do sting operations to make sure those are authentic proprietary Chinese medicine goods? By the time you receive a complaint, it's too late. Over to the customs. I thank the member for his question and comment. In our enforcement actions, we go undercover, also known as sting operations. So we do mount such operations. We rely on information, and then with the information, we go undercover. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho. First, I thank the customs for having been closely in touch with our sector. But then we see little improvement over the years. In our trade, we see 2 problems. First, frozen pigs being passed off as live pigs. This falls under the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. And second, non-local and non-organic vegetables being passed off as organic or local vegetables. What's the amount of resources committed to these issues? There's a reason I put these questions to you. People buy pork and then they use it to make soup, and then they think it's not as good as they thought. So the consumers lose faith in our local pork. For customs and also the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, would you be looking into new laws to address some problems? At some stores, they have, say, 1,000 catty of pork, but they only have one pig there. So what they sell there is completely inconsistent with what they show you. Many years ago, I talked to customs. How do you make sure it's fresh pig or chilled pork? It's less about how you find out whether it's chilled or live pork. So it's about sting operations. how much manpower did you put into those issues? For fresh pork versus chilled pork, we do have a line of communication with the FEHD. I was part of the meeting. There were some black sheep, a small number of them. They passed off chilled pork as fresh pork. Recently, the FEHD has taken action too. Back then, we had to adduce evidence in a court setting. We had to prove whether the pork was fresh pork or chilled pork. There were technical difficulties. We enlisted the help of the government laboratory to do studies. It's hard to tell whether the pork was chilled or fresh. And it's hard to adduce scientific evidence in court, but we will work closely with the FEHD. Chair, I raised this point for a particular reason. Even in corruption cases, it's hard to tell where a certain amount of money comes from. When you see only one pig at a store, but there was, say, 1,000 catties of pork on the store, so something doesn't make sense, something doesn't add up. And we're not talking about just a small number of black sheep. We should be telling good stories of Hong Kong. There was this TV show saying that they have to find reliable sellers of pork because it's a common phenomenon to have people passing off chilled pork as fresh pork. So my second question is organic versus organic vegetables. Will the customs look at the receipt? So that, are you saying that no enforcement action is taken? How do you ensure healthy development of Hong Kong's organic vegetable market? There are inorganic vegetables out there. What's worth $5 and they are sold at $20? Does that make sense? So you were asking two questions. First, the price, and then the organic vegetable. Now we will review our sting operations to see how to achieve maximum effectiveness in resolving the problem. After the meeting, the Bureau or the Customs can sit down with Mr. Stephen Ho to sort out this issue. So please, the CEDB should not pass the buck to the FEHD. I know the Customs has been taking proactive action, but it's not about testing the pork. It's about taking enforcement action, going undercover to show that you can uncover the cases. And even when you stop a store from operating, some days out later, the store can reopen. It's about ensuring that people, not just visitors, but also local residents, can buy authentic goods. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you. On online shopping, there's this table. We expect a rise in online shopping complaints, but then this table shows something odd. From 2019 to 2020, there were massive differences between the figures from those 2 years. What does the government make of it? Why are we seeing this trend in this table? My second question, paragraph 14 of the paper. When local or overseas websites are found to have engaged in illegal conduct, the customs can request the removal of such info. And in light of circumstances, the customs can take joint operations with overseas enforcement agencies. Do we have such cases in the past where an overseas website was requested to remove content and it worked? How did those joint operations work? First, offer a brief reply, and then my colleagues will tell us more. First, on online shopping. From 2019 to 2020, there was a jump from 1,000 cases or so to 3,000. Starting from 2020, there were many complaints about masks. through online shopping. Your second question. We work with the mainland authorities. We had memorandum of understanding with 26 mainland provinces or municipalities. We try to sort out those issues online, and then with other economies, say with South Korea, Japan, Singapore, we also have similar agreements. We're trying to take joint actions under those agreements. For detailed figures, let me see if my colleagues can tell us more.
Thank you, member. On enforcement of law overseas, when we suspect some websites for being problematic, we would communicate with the service provider. Now, in year 2022, there were 137 requests made by us for removal of the websites or have the websites taken down. International law enforcement, we would work with the Interpol because we have very close connection with the Interpol. We have colleagues seconded to work with the Interpol as well. In year 2022, concerning joint operation with Interpol concerning problematic websites, there were 65 joint operations taken. Thank you. Follow-up question. There were 137 requests made by the customs. So did the Interpol or did the service provider accede to all the requests and have the problematic websites taken down? And also, what is the result of the action? Were they prosecution? Now, the major goal is to have the websites taken down. These websites are running unfair trade practices or illegal activities online. So basically, all 137 requests were acceded to. And also the 65 requests made together with Interpol were also successful. Mr. Perry Yu. Chair, Hong Kong is an international city for tourism. Our image is very important. Eating, shopping, and living, these are the major components of tourism. Now, shopping is a major component. So, in genuine products and also scamming tourists, we can't have even one case because it would tarnish our brand name. So I thank the CNED for doing the prevention work as well as taking forward law enforcement. So you said there are 231 colleagues being deployed to the task. Still, 70,000 complaints were made, and the number of prosecution was not high. However, I understand the workload is quite heavy. You have the rapid response or the rapid task force to deal with these complaints as soon as possible. And for doing inspections and giving out pamphlets. So how many people are deployed to this rapid task force? Now, the tourism industry is concerned about our good image because with the rising number of tourists flocking in, we have to maintain our good brand name. So is the CNED going to increase the number of manpower for this team? Thank you, Mr. Yu. Now, the establishment of a rapid task force is 20 colleagues. Now, it depends on the necessity. With the resumption of cross-boundary travel, the number of tourists is on the rise. If the number of complaints also rises, we will deploy more people to the team and increase its capacity to deal with these cases. Now, the problem is the tourists may be only staying for a short while in Hong Kong, say 3 or 4 days. So the rapid task force is racing against time to crack the cases. If sufficient information and documents like receipts are provided before the tourists go back home, then we would have a better chance to take actions. And also the CNED is going to create a Weibo public account. So that we can disseminate information on our work as well as the arrangements to our friends in the mainland. Now, is there a collaboration arrangements between the CNED and the trade? Now, the Travel Industry Authority has a list of traders. So is the CNED working with us? We are working very closely with the authority to protect tourist rights and interests. So we have a communication system for traders suspected to be involved in malpractices. They would be referred to us for following up. Now, in terms of helping the operation of the CNED, the information will be passed on to the quick response teams and also through the websites of the Travel Industry Authority. These information will be passed on to mainland residents. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you. Now, you may have heard about a TV program on the 15th of March on protection of consumers' rights. This is a mainland TV program. Now, it is a very good program for enhancing awareness on monitoring quality of products. Now, will the Hong Kong SAR government consider setting up similar platforms together with the mainland authorities to stamp fake products and offer another channel with a lot of spotlights for consumers? Thank you. As I said, we have established communication platforms with 26 municipals and provinces, including a complaints referral platform for addressing cross-boundary complaints. In terms of e-commerce and e-consumption, we have established a one-stop platform for protecting consumers' rights on e-shopping. And also, Mr. Yim mentioned whether we would conduct more publicity campaign with the mainland counterparts. Yes, we will take note of that as well. Thank you. If you can establish a brand complaints channel together with KOLs and the authority, it would be very effective. CNED, please. Thank you, Mr. Yim, for your suggestion. Now, the CNED is going to launch a major publicity campaign before the 1st of May. That is a major holiday season for mainland residents. So we will make use of social media platforms and the website to disseminate consumer rights information to potential tourists. Thank you. It is now my turn. Now, the CNED takes a risk-based approach, and many members talk about sting operation. Now, here's my thoughts. Now, I hope you would let people know that there would be sting operations conducted so that it would enhance the deterrence effect. And also, is there a possibility that we can have a blacklist? Now, before they come to Hong Kong, tourists can check the blacklist for unscrupulous traders and avoid them. Now, in terms of publicity, we should be more targeted. Members talk about black spots like Tsim Sha Tsui with a lot of cosmetics and pharmacies. Now, you may deploy someone to be on standby there. And also you can share good practices among the traders. This will be effective in curtailing law-breaking behaviors. In terms of publicity, you mentioned Weibao, and another member mentioned Xiaohongshu, the Little Red Book. So I wonder how you can make use of more social platforms and information technology to help your efforts. Thank you, Chair. We definitely agree with your point. Now we will try to make our sting operations more effective in terms of preventing potential crimes. Now, in terms of blacklist, if there are traders being complained a lot, we will pay close attention to them. In terms of publicity, yes, we would go to Chim Sa Choi and other traders previously involved in unscrupulous behaviors to do publicity. We want to alert consumers about them. Now, Xiaohongshu is also something that we are considering. Thank you very much. That concludes the first round. Oh, Mr. Kisan-Yang. Thank you, Chair. Now about the implementation progress of the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. Some members mentioned pharmacies selling Chinese proprietary drugs. We need publicity to enhance consumers' awareness. Now we have to make a distinguish between pharmacies and other local community drugstores. There are little drugstores in To Kwa Wan marketing as places where you can buy Chinese proprietary drugs. Now tourists cannot distinguish between pharmacies and these local drugstores, especially in To Kwa Wan. Now, some tourists, while waiting for lunch, would walk into these little drugstores to make purchases. Now, some common Chinese proprietary medicine would be marked up 10 times. This would give the tourists a bad experience. And sometimes the origin of the products are different. On the box, it says the chocolate is from Switzerland, but it is actually produced in the mainland. Now, everyone would think they are buying chocolates from the Switzerland, but actually they are made in China. So I think we have to do better in terms of publicity. Otherwise, the tourists would be misled into buying these products. Of course, they also have a responsibility to check the manufacturing country, but still, you have to help them. Thank you. We have heard the member loud and clear. We will step up inspection in tourism attractions, especially black spots. Thank you very much. I think this is a very good suggestion. We will definitely incorporate these elements in our future publicity campaign. I just want to remind the governments and the relevant departments. The To Kwa Wan and Hong Kong area, the areas are frequently visited by tourists. So if there are one or two high-profile cases, then it would deter other traders from committing an offense. Yes, To Kwa Wan and Hong Kong are major tourist attractions, and also there are other districts frequently visited by tourists. So these will also be our focuses. 5 minutes left, so that's the end of the first round. Anyone else? If that's the case, then for the second round, we still have 5 minutes. Mr. Peter Shiu, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just then, Mr. Kisan-Yang mentioned medicine shops versus pharmacies. I agree. This is an important area. I represent pharmacies. I represent a group of pharmacies. There's a difference between pharmacies and medicine stores or medicine shops. For pharmacies, you need a registered pharmacologist, and then they can put up a sign that reads RX outside the store. They can give you prescription drugs. These operators cherish the license they have. But then for ordinary medicine stores, they just need a business registration. They even call their goods 100% duty-free goods to attract customers. We are a tax-free society anyway. But in any case, each operator can make up their own mind about their marketing strategies, but then fraud is off the table. There's no place for fraud in Hong Kong. One is one too many when it comes to fraud cases. So can the government get more officers to spread the word? Can we do roll-up banners, get uniformed officers to hand out leaflets outside the stores? It's fine to be doing business as long as they're doing legitimate business. Can you also get the Department of Justice involved? For breaches of the ordinance, you need penalties that can achieve deterrence. I agree with Mr. Xiu's comment. Indeed, every such case is one too many. We will work with the customs in stepping up promotion and education, as well as enforcement. Any follow-up questions from you, Mr. Xiu? I have a second question. If there are no other members lining up to speak, does any other member wish to speak? No? Mr. Peter Xiu, please. My second question has to do with fitness centers, the unfair trade practices there. This is also a matter of public concern. Again, I thank the customs for their work. More than 4,000 complaints were received, and then there was a sharp fall in the number. I believe the customs has put in a lot of work. But as I have said, for fraud cases, every one of them is one too many. Now, how do we ensure compliance for those people? Of course, we know they have to do business. They want more customers. Many friends of mine go to fitness centers. They have to pay on multiple occasions. They also pay for prepaid packages. They trust a certain trainer, so they pay more to establish a longer contractual relationship. So there are longer contracts. It's fine if these contracts are arrived consensually, but then aggressive behavior to coerce people into entering the contract is not acceptable. So how do we ensure that operators can do business without the aggressive trade practices? Of course, I know most gym operators are legitimate operators. But then coercive business practices to get people to enter into contracts is simply unacceptable. I will draw the line here, and now for the government to give us a response to Mr. Xiu's questions. Thank you. For the fitness trade, we do inspections and also investigate cases starting from 2018. Every year we had 200 or so complaints. The number has been on a downward trend. Now we're getting 20 or so complaints every year. This shows the amount of work customs and other departments have done. But as Mr. Peter Xiu rightly pointed out, every one such case is one too many. But just then customs said the figure went from 4,000 to 2,000. What's that figure for? That figure covers beauty services and also travel services. So that's the grand total for all service sectors. But for fitness centers, the figure went from 200 or so to 20 or so. So now we'll wrap up this item. We thank the government for the response they provided. We move on to the fourth item on the agenda. This is the Hong Kong Tourism Board's work plan for 2023 to 24. This is LC bracket number CB bracket 4193/2023 bracket 04. And also CB bracket 4193/2023 bracket 05. We will now invite the government officials to join us. Members who wish to speak, please press the button. Joining us for this item, we have Mr. Kevin Yeung, Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism, Ms. Vivian Sum, Commissioner for Tourism, Ms. Wendy Chong, and also Mr. Ding Chang from the Hong Kong Tourism Board, Ms. Alice Lee also from the HKTB, as well as her colleague, Ms. Erica Wong. Welcome. Can the government walk us through the paper? There are PowerPoint slides to go with the presentation. 5 minutes. Thank you. The Hong Kong Tourism Board is a statutory body. The Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau follows the directions set up. The plan under the 14th Five-Year Plan, that is the approach of shaping tourism with cultural activities and promoting culture through tourism. We want to establish a world-class Bay Area for leisure. We want to tell good stories of Hong Kong. We also will contribute to Hong Kong's role as an international tourism hub and a demonstration zone for multi-destination tourism. The detailed work is set out in the work plan to support the travel sector and support the recovery. In 2023 to 24, the government will provide $1.38 billion, roughly the same as last year. The HKTB will dip into its reserves, roughly $200 million, to fully support the work. In 2023 to 24, the HKTB will drive the recovery of the tourism sector and also promote Hong Kong's role as an Asia event capital, promote multi-destination tourism, enhance visitor experience, and also continuous support to the travel sector. These are the 4 key areas of the HKTB. We're seeing recovery of the economy now. Hello Hong Kong has been launched starting from February 6th. We have seen resumption of normal travel with the mainland. We have seen a continuous increase in visitor number. In mid-March, every day we saw 82,000 visitors per year. This is roughly 54% of the 2019 and also 46% of the 2018 level. Last weekend, daily visitor number hit 107,000 visitors. I will now invite Mr. Ding Chang from the HKTB to tell us about the work plan, strategies for 2023 to 24 of the Hong Kong Tourism Board, and then we will be happy to take questions. Before moving on, Mr. Chang, please be mindful of the time limit. I will briefly talk about the work. Over the past couple of years, we want to maintain our vibrancy and visibility. We put our money into supporting Hong Kong's tourism sector and also the relevant sectors to maintain the consumption level starting from the end of last year. We invited mainland and overseas tourism sectors to come on trips to Hong Kong. On February 2nd this year, we launched the Hello Hong Kong campaign. So the work started well before Hello Hong Kong was launched. On some figures of visitors, the recovery is promising. For mainland visitors, especially overland, when the rail links resumed, the mainland visitor numbers picked up. For overseas visitors, the recovery is slightly slower. But that has to do with the constraints on the airlines. And on visitor number, in the first 20 days of March, we saw a number that's roughly 45% of the pre-COVID levels. That's roughly 75,000 visitors per day. For most of these visitors, They are from the mainland, especially from the Greater Bay Area, from the Guangdong province. For visitors who come here, they come here for similar purposes as before. They're mostly here to visit family members or on business trips. And then in March, more visitors have been here for leisure purposes. Overseas, there are constraints on air travel capacity, so the air ticket remained on the more costly side. For visitors to Hong Kong, we do surveys to find out what they like about Hong Kong. So there are open-ended questions. We're doing well in dining, shopping, and the convenience in our transport. And also, language, also one of our strengths. There are two key elements. First, nature, green tourism. Visitors get to go hiking here. And the second thing people like about us is our art. The Palace Museum and the M Plus Museum opened. So those became one of our tourist attractions. Our opportunities include our national policy support under the 14th Five-Year Plan. We have the CTD plan, the Culture and Tourism Development Plan. Hong Kong will develop into a tourism hub internationally. We are also going to develop into an aviation hub. This will help us do even better in tourism. We also have our distinctive advantages. We are an aviation center. We offer convenience in our transport. There are also new attractions that are completed in recent years. There are also challenges. We will need more time to fully recover our capacity to receive visitors. There are also uncertainties in the global economy. The Hong Kong dollar is linked to the US dollar. This makes it more costly to visit Hong Kong. For our work plan this year, I will briefly go over them. Hello Hong Kong has started. We're sending out a message to the world. This is important. We need to send out a clear message that we have reopened. This is not just a recovery in tourism, but also a new start for Hong Kong. Overseas, there are also publicity campaigns to say hello to the world. We're also giving out consumption vouchers for visitors. Of course, we know that visitors don't come here just for the $100 consumption voucher. But we are trying to show visitors that we are sincere. We want to bring together merchants, and we have handed out 300,000 Hong Kong goodies, and we're trying to get more merchants to join us. Sorry, you have 1 minute left. We also give out air ticket. We invite representatives from the media and also key opinion leaders or KOL to visit Hong Kong. There's overseas publicity, but then there are untrue reports overseas about Hong Kong. The budget this year also promises resources for tourism in promoting MISC tourism and also cruises. I want to become an Asian event capital. We will bring back many mega events that will see the same scale as the pre-COVID days. There will also be many mega events in the city. Greater Bay Area tourism is also an area we're working on. We're working with the mainland authorities. We're getting in touch with them to create this GBA tourism as a brand name. We will continue to support our travel sector, including the quality travel services scheme. The prospects are promising. We're optimistic. We expect roughly 26 million visitors to Hong Kong with a stronger recovery in the second half of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lot of members queuing up to ask questions. We have some 11 members. Now we only have 1 hour, so I can only give you 3 minutes, including questions and answers. Please be brief in your questions and also the administration's reply as well, because there is also one item pending. Mr. Peter Shield, Stephen Ho, Kirsten Young, Dr. So Chang Wing, Frankie Yik, Robert Lee, Holden Chow, Perry Yu, Chen Xiu Hong, Andrew Lam, Yim Kong, Dr. Simon Lee, 12 members already. Peter Shield, please. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the tourism industry is a pillar of our economy. After the 3-year pandemic and the black-led violence before that, mainland visitors are changing their perspective towards traveling to in Hong Kong. Now, I understand Mr. Kevin Yeung and the Tourism Bureau is promoting Hong Kong in the mainland and overseas to assure people that it is safe to come. But you have to be careful, and you have to pay close attention to some people's perspective of tourism in Hong Kong. Some people have said on Xiaohongshu that they are being discriminated in Hong Kong. And also there was a cyclist who has been traveling all over China, and he said his bike was stolen in Hong Kong. Now I understand the Tourism Bureau has made clarification at once. And also many users on Xiaohongshu said Hong Kong people do not discriminate against Putonghua, and also the cyclist has received support from the government, and in the end, the cyclist said Hong Kong is a very tourist-friendly place. It is a very important message for the mainland residents. Now there are some 500,000 air tickets to be given out over the world. Now, remember that when we were at the height of the pandemic, there was a group of people who risked their life to come help us, and they helped us to build the makeshift hospitals. These unsung heroes have returned to their hometown. Now we are recovering, and I think it is only right that we give out some free tickets to these heroes and their family members to come to Hong Kong and enjoy themselves, to show our thanks. Now I have to draw a line here. Thank you very much. Mr. Kevin Yeung? Yes, just very briefly about the air tickets campaign. During the pandemic, the AA has purchased these air tickets from the airlines, so the arrangement has been worked out by them. The Tourism Bureau was involved in terms of assigning priority to the destinations and also the targeted audience. So I will take your view to the AA. Thank you. I want to use it as a token of thanks and gratitude. And also, these people will make consumption in Hong Kong. It would be good for our economy. We give our heartfelt thanks to these people, these heroes who have come help us. So I will talk to the AA. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I thank the Tourism Bureau and Mr. Kevin Yeung for being on your front feet to help Hong Kong recover and tell good stories of Hong Kong. Now I hope the public can share the fruits as well. There are going to be a lot of development plans. I advised the Commissioner for Tourism that we should develop marine tourism. Now we lack the hardware and software. We have a 1,000 kilometers long shoreline and islands which are undeveloped for tourism. Now the tourism attractions on sea are very scattered. Now you can only rely on reputation when you are trying to find a boat at the Sai Kung Pier. when people come from the airport or the ferry piers, there is not a pamphlet telling them where they can enjoy themselves on sea. So I think we can help local fishermen to transition to the leisure fishery trade. Now, we have seen accidents involving wakeboarders. They collided with fishing boats and accidents occurred. Now, if you want to develop marine economy, you have to draw a clear line between industries' use of marine space. You have to put in more efforts. I hope you can reduce the occurrence of marine or accidents on seas. And also, there are going to be reclamation projects. Now, the river pier and also Area 132, and also towards the west, there will be a lot of reclamation projects. Now, the Pearl River Delta and Shenzhen, they have developed their marine tourism ecology. They have yacht clubs and so on, but we are lagging far behind. Now, if you can include designs of leisure piers in a reclamation projects, then you can have synergy with the marine parks. And also you can make use of the Brothers Islands as well. Thank you. In terms of making use of our natural resources, we need collaboration between different bureaus and departments. Now, we are the one to spearhead tourism attractions developments, and we are the one to consolidate our resources to promote to tourists where to have fun in Hong Kong. So we want to help tourists to find tourism attractions in Hong Kong conveniently. Very briefly, you have to have a leisure fishery information center or recreational fishery center to give them information, because they can't call me to look for an answer. So I hope you can provide a comprehensive marine tourism experience to them. Thank you. On recreational fisheries information center, it involves a lot of inputs. There are many factors to consider. We will take this perspective on how we can provide these information most efficiently, and I think we should also involve local fishermen and the local people. Now, I will invite a written response from the department afterwards. Mr. Kisan Yang, thank you. Tourism industry is a very important pillar. Now, it is of utmost importance that the tourists have a good experience. We have to ensure that they can do shopping, eating, and sightseeing happily. Now, sadly, look at these pictures in Took One and Hong Kong. Visitors have to join long queues for food. Now, it is not very hot at the moment, so it is still fine. But what about summer? What kind of experience will they have? The price tag is $40. Now, it is even cheaper than our tea restaurants, and they have to finish their lunch within 15 minutes and vacate their seats. What kind of a tourism experience is this? And it would not be a very good experience for the neighboring shops as well, because I have received a lot of complaints that the doorways are being blocked and the coach buses are blocking the way. I know the commissioner and the CSTB has done a lot, but I want results. Still, this is the situation we have right now. Can we have some quality travel tours or tour groups? if you can enhance the quality of food and say charge them $80 instead of $40, then I think we would have very quality tour groups and the consumption experience would be much better. And also you have to set a target for how many tourism attractions to visit in a tour. Otherwise, everyone will flock to Togo One. This is not a good experience at all. Thank you, Chairman. We understand where Mr. Kirsten Yang is coming from. We have been attaching importance to this question. Hong Kong is a very small place. Not just To Kwa Wan and Hong Kong. If there is an over-concentration of tourists in a certain district, it would bring inconvenience to the locals. Like Mr. Kirsten Yang said, we want to offer a premium experience to tourists, and we don't want to see long queues. Recently, the Commissioner and the Travel Industry Authority have been working with the trade to sort out these issues. There are many solutions possible. Say, for example, setting limits for the number of tour groups to a certain place and encouraging a more diverse itinerary and schedule them at different times. This is what we are going to do. Well, in terms of the specifics of how many tourist attractions to visit and the charge, well, we have to work it out with the trade themselves. There are real issues to consider by the trade. But at least our goal is the same, that is to offer good services to tourists and minimize the impact on the locals as much as possible. Thank you. Now, members, please be as brief as possible in your question to allow more time for the officials. Dr. So Chang Wing. Now, the Hello Hong Kong campaign is good, but manpower is a problem. In terms of mega events, they attract more people to Hong Kong, but we don't have the manpower to cope. Now, we have a manpower crunch everywhere. I wonder how the government can offer more incentives and effective measures to help the industries to address these manpower crunch. Now, in the mainland, now people have been at home for a long time and there is pent-up demand for travel. So it is no surprise that we have more tourists in Hong Kong. But it is to my surprise that many mainland tourists are not willing to spend in Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong power is getting stronger, and also because of the manpower crunch, the cost of running businesses is higher. So I wonder whether you have launched an effective publicity campaign to address these cost issues. Now, the smart platform has been launched. Now, in terms of addressing the shortage of manpower and reducing the cost of tourism in Hong Kong, smart tourism may be a good direction. Thank you. I will address the manpower issue and I will invite Mr. Dane Zhang to talk about the other points. Now, we are aware of the manpower shortage issue, not just in the travel industry. The retail and the F&B industry have also told us about their plights. So we are considering the possible solutions. We want to address the shortage of frontline help. So I would defer the question to Mr. Dane Zhang. Now, in terms of publicity in the mainland, we are preparing to launch this campaign. It has been some 6 weeks since we have launched the Hello Hong Kong campaign, but it has just started internationally. Now, mainland is a place of focus. Now, we have conducted familiarization tours. we are promoting our travel products as premium products. Now, a few weeks ago, the key opinion influencers have come to Hong Kong and they are spreading the word for us. Now, hotel accommodation is quite costly at the moment. Some hotels are still offering staycation packages for locals or long stay packages for local people. I think later on the price will come down.
名議員唔該。
Next, Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you. My first question is similar to the question asked by Dr. So just then. I welcome the work done by the Hong Kong Tourism Board in terms of other promotion done. Now, we don't see a massive influx of visitors yet, but then we're already seeing a labor crunch across all sectors. In paragraph 15, the paper says the labor crunch is a problem common to many sectors across the globe. That's true, but then what's the government doing to fix the problem? Without imported labor, you cannot fix the problem. Some hotels need 17 to 20% extra manpower. For other hotels, they are short of 30% of manpower, so that's a serious problem. We have a capacity issue. In a moment, Mr. Perry Yu will touch upon the tourist coach issue. No drivers. When the third runway opens, you need tens of thousands of workers. Where do we find the workers? So the government needs to do work here. Step up the effort in promotion. Otherwise, we're stuck in this position. When more visitors come towards the end of the year, then we cannot offer a good visitor experience. But I don't see this mentioned in the paper. In paragraph 45, the government is helping with the effort to drive the recovery of the tourism sector. Ships come in from the west, but they cannot take the central route. This has to do with the undersea tunnel of the Sha Tin Central Link, so ships are barred from taking the central route. Now the reclamation for the third runway is mostly done. So the central route is now clear. So we need to talk to the Marine Department, open up the central route again. We cannot ask ships to take a detour around the southern Lantau, 2 to 3 hours just to look at the sea. When ships come in, people want to get on the deck to see the harbor, but we do not let ships take the central route. So if you want to promote tourism, you need to do something about this. On the first question, the government is considering the options. The second question, my colleague, Ms. Vivian Sum, will tell us more. Now, for the question about the central route, we're just done with the consultancy study. We're reviewing the findings. Once we are done with the review, we will make an announcement as soon as we come to a conclusion. Next, Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chairman. Some questions about the consulates and also Peking Opera. Now we are seeing recovery in full swing. There will be mega events down the road. So for the Hong Kong Tourism Board, has it got in touch with different consulate generals? There are geopolitical tensions, but then with cultural activities, there are opportunities for collaboration and win-win outcomes. So can we talk to consulates to bring in more business visitors? Can we bring in more world-class performances to Hong Kong? Annex 2 in the paper says that some money will go to the HKTB. The budget will be more than $1.2 billion. I'm not questioning whether this is value for money, but then we have to review the effectiveness of the work. The paper refers to KOL influencers, etc., and covers many places. We spend the money, but what are some ways for us to tell whether we are getting the bang for our buck and see where we should be prioritizing over others? Apart from international performances, will we be inviting top-notch actors, artists such as Peking opera troupes from our country? These are artists offering the Chinese flavor, and they can help offer visitors a unique experience. People can go to New York for Broadway shows. So can we create an experience where when visitors come here, they want to go to the West Kowloon to check out the shows there? On mega events in culture and tourism, we work with different consulates in Hong Kong. We remain in touch with them. The LCSD has held many exhibitions. We also have performances where we maintain a working relationship with different local consulates. As for different performances, we have to look at those cases, the specific circumstances. On top-notch state artists, we try to invite these artists, but we also have to consider their own schedules. As an East meets West Center for Cultural Exchange, we try to bring in the top-notch performances from our country. We want to promote such performances and also give our local residents more opportunities to appreciate the performances. Now, on the Hong Kong Tourism Board, of course, we put money into the HKTB. We want to see results. So we work closely with the HKTB and keep an eye on the outcomes of the promotional efforts. Next, Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you. The Hello Hong Kong campaign is good. We need to promote this campaign across the globe. We need to show the world that we're reopened, we are welcoming visitors here. Some questions. For external publicity, Southeast Asian visitors used to come here in large numbers, and they spent a lot of money here. We will be targeting them. I know they will be covered in a global campaign. But can we focus on them? We have seen many high-spending visitors from Southeast Asia. We also had many visitors from South Korea and Japan. So can we adjust our work to focus on those visitors? The chief executive led a delegation to the Middle East. Now, people there may have a limited understanding of us, but they could be a potential source of visitors. Can we prioritize our resources to focus on visitors from various places, Southeast Asia, South Korea, Japan, and also the Middle East? And now I want to turn to the case in To Kwa Wan. My colleague, Ms. Dari Lee, also has been following the situation. There is the Travel Industry Authority. There are new measures to target certain measures. For certain illicit tours, there are measures against them. So can the government tell us what measures are taken to deal with various problems? On promotional strategies, there are different strategies for different places. Mr. Ding Cheng can tell us more, and also my colleague, Ms. Vivian Sum, can tell us about the other aspect. Mr. Ding Cheng, the plans are working as we're expecting for Southeast Asia, the ASEAN places. That's one of our key markets, so we focus on them. They have a positive impression of Hong Kong and also mainland China. So we put more resources to the promotion for Southeast Asia. For the Middle East, indeed, we underinvested in the Middle Eastern market. The chief executive led a delegation to the Middle East. Now there is greater interest from the Middle East in Hong Kong. Middle Eastern visitors tend to stop at Thailand. But now they can also consider coming to Hong Kong, where they can take this as a gateway to the Greater Bay Area. Colleagues, we will extend our meeting by 15 minutes. Please keep your questions and answers brief. Mr. Perry Yu, please. Sorry, we left out the Commissioner for Tourism. For the Travel Industry Authority, the authority requires registration for all incoming tours. The operators also have to register the places where the visitors will do the shopping. There will also be crowd control measures. There can be no coerced shopping. There are also crowd control measures. There is also promotion. So when visitors believe they're being forced to do shopping, they can file complaint. Next, Mr. Perry, you. As other members have said, Hello Hong Kong was launched in February 2nd. And we're also seeing more mega events. These measures have produced effect. Hello Hong Kong is fairly successful. On promoting Hong Kong's image, the Hong Kong Tourism Board has done a lot of work. Of course, our image matters. For the travel sector, how do we encourage our sector to go global, to do targeted marketing? How do we provide the appropriate support for the sector to go global so that they can work with overseas and mainland peers? How can we do those things to get more visitors to come to Hong Kong? On the manpower issue, Mr. Frankie Yek touched on this. The government needs to do a holistic assessment of the tourism sector. For travel agencies, the aviation sector, and also hotels, how many workers do we need? What can we do to address the manpower crunch? In the short term, can the government help us do large-scale job fairs, recruitment fairs? There are pressing issues to address, and we're in a major bottleneck. Can we get a response from the government on these points I just raised? The government is aware of the manpower issues confronting many sectors. To address this crunch, there are short, medium, and long-term measures. How do we get more people to work here and also imported labor? These issues are contentious issues, so we have to proceed with caution. The government is looking at the manpower crunch across sectors and also looking at the kind of workers that are needed across sectors before coming up with a way to help different sectors address those problems. On the other questions, Mr. Ding Chang can tell us more. In this year's budget, there is extra funding. We will use more than $100 million to support the tourism sector to help these operators reach out to the world and take part in fairs. We hope that more operators from this sector can join us, especially those medium to small scale travel agencies. We're trying to step up the marketing in terms of promoting quality travel experience. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong. Chair, I will not repeat the points raised by other members, so I want to focus on 2 points. In paragraph 3 of the paper, promoting Hong Kong as a tourism hub and also a demonstration zone for multi-destination tourism, the Hong Kong Tourism Board said it would encourage multi-destination tourism and get the visitors to go there and also work with the local authorities of the various other cities of the GBA. So apart from encouraging, promoting, do we have any specific collaboration initiatives? By consolidating the resources, what kind of resources are we talking about? Apart from multi-destination tourism, will we work with other cities in the Greater Bay Area in designing travel products? Say, can we create some kind of package tour over 5 days involving multiple locations? The Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau was set up last year. the CSTB took over some portfolios from the Home Affairs Bureau and the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. In theory, the CSTB can deploy the resources. Instead of having the culture and the tourism bureaus each working in their own silos, we just had the art silo and we have the World Golf Tournament in Hong Kong. What can the CSTB do in terms of coordinating the matters so that visitors who come here will stay longer to take part in other major events? How can the CSTB ensure that the resources are better consolidated to achieve the goals?
Secretary, thank you. Since the CSTB was established, synergy has been achieved in the areas under our purview. In terms of sports and cultural events, if the CSTB identifies an angle where we can attract tourists with, we would launch a publicity campaign for those programs, as well as Hong Kong as a whole. So tourists can come to visit other places in Hong Kong while attending those targeted programs. Say, for example, we have the West Kowloon Cultural Districts, and we have a large number of museums and arts exhibitions like Art Basel for tourists to enjoy themselves with. So as a bureau, we will be at a better position to coordinate the efforts. Now, about the collaboration with the GBA sister cities, we want to promote Hong Kong as a stop in multi-destination tourism, and we will work on that. Mr. Andrew Lam, thank you. In terms of the future developments of tourism, we are targeting targets other than the traditional Southeast Asian markets as well. So maybe the Middle East countries will be a major source of tourists in the future. Now we have to think about the culture, the Islamic culture of people in the Middle East. How can we cater for them in terms of dining, travel, and so on? Now, in terms of electronic payments in the mainland, many tourists may not be well disposed to use them in the mainland. So how can we help foreign tourists to adapt to the payments method in the mainland and other arrangements? Now, in terms of the events, they mostly happen in the winter. Now, what about summertime? Are there plans to fill the gap? I would invite the executive director to take the questions. Yes. Now, the Islamic culture and traditions are very different in the Middle East compared with Asia countries. Now, they have very particular requests, and on this front, we are not doing enough. So we will make an effort to help these tourists. In terms of multi-destination tourism, there are different arrangements in terms of payments and so on among the GBA cities. So last week we have met with the Guangdong provincial government on how we can pack our payment systems. Now we have some payment tools in Hong Kong as well, but it is not very convenient for mainland tourists. Now, summertime may not be a good season for hosting major events because it is not just hot, but there are also typhoons. As a result, a lot of organizers are avoiding summer. for hosting the events. However, under the Happy Hong Kong campaign, we have the Hong Kong summer treats. We want to use the harbour as the backdrop of our festival to attract tourists. Mr. Yim Kong, thank you. Now, we all know that gourmet is an essential component of our Chinese culture, and it is also a postcard for Hong Kong. Now, several years ago, the CCTV has created a program called China, The Taste of China. Now, after that program has been, after the airing of that program, many tourists are visiting the places mentioned in the program for a taste of the gourmet. Now, can the Hong Kong SAR government invite the CCTV or other program producers to invite a bite of China to be filmed in Hong Kong and in showing off our gourmets and involving local KOLs and artists to feature in the program to attract more people to come to Hong Kong? Secretary, thank you. We have a very diversified cuisine, and it is a main attraction for tourists. In terms of the publicity campaign, I will invite the executive director to pitch in. Now, the CCTV and other TV stations have similar programs or similar plans. Some have been filmed already, but they are not aired yet. Now, you are right. Gourmet food is a major attraction. So together with other culture and arts elements, we are producing variety shows with mainland Hong Kong TV stars. And there are shows showcasing our culture to pander to mainland tourists. Now, the younger generation of tourists are looking for a more in-depth tourism in Hong Kong. Now, Ms. Dari Lee, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Now, it's worth celebrating to see tourists coming back. However, To Kwa Wan's issue is really serious. In the short run, the travel industry authorities should not just focus on shops, but restaurants as well. Restaurants should be looked into as well. Now, as I have said before, you should make reference to the licensing system under the liquor licensing board. There should be requirements about diverting pedestrian flow. This should be part of the licensing condition. If they cannot do that, they should not be given a license. Now, the cruise terminal, this is a major investment of the Hong Kong SAR government, and it is also a very scenic spot. Why can't we take the tour groups to the spacious cruise, the large space at the cruise terminal? There are restaurants and there are parking spaces. Maybe there are not a lot of supporting facilities, but at least it would not cause nuisance to the locals. And also, you should keep in close liaison with the country. It shouldn't be a lose-lose situation. To Kwa Wan is my constituent. It is a very good district, but it is not a tourism district after all. We shouldn't encourage tour groups focusing on shopping with a low fee. I fully agree with Ms. Dari Lee. We shouldn't ask tourists to pay to make up for the cost of hosting the tour groups. Now, Commissioner, please. Yes, concerning dining in To Kwa Wan, it is different with shopping. In terms of shopping, the law is very clear that we can regulate the shops on that. Now, this sheer amount of diners is what causing the problem for the restaurants. Now, tomorrow, the travel industry authority will meet with those restaurants to see how they are going to deal with the long queues. Now, whether the cruise terminal should be made a visiting spot for tourists, I understand that there are tour groups to the cruise terminal as well. Sorry, I have to follow up on this. Without regulation on restaurants on this, you cannot solve this problem. We have been following up on this problem for more than 5 years. This is not a new problem. It just come back again after the return of visitors. Now, the travel industry authority told me that it could be done. Now, the restaurants are not open to locals. They are just doing visitor business. Yes, we understand that. Tomorrow, as the meeting with the travel industry authority, we will follow up on this topic. Yes, Chair, we will deal with this problem seriously. Now, the Commissioner talked about the present legislation, but if we can do anything to help with the issue, we will do that. Well, that concludes this item. Item 5, dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for travel sector. LC paper number CB brackets 4193 2023 brackets 06. Now we will invite the administration to come in. Members who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. We welcome the officials.
呢個議題
For this item, we have Mr. Kevin Yang, the Secretary, Ms. Vivian Sham, the Commissioner, Ms. Trinky Chan, Assistant Commissioner. From the HAMC Insurance Limited, we have Mr. Clement Chan and Ms. Irene Mock. From the Transport Department, we have Mr. So Zhenxun. The administration, please. Introduction. Thank you. Now, the government has relaxed most social distancing measures, and travelers are coming back in an orderly manner. In its recovery, the travel industry is facing many challenges, including the manpower crunch and also financing problems. Now, in the 2023-24 budget, the Financial Secretary mentioned that reference will be made to the SME financing a loan guarantee scheme to launch a dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for the travel sector. 100% loan guarantee will be offered to eligible passenger service operators and licensed travel agents. Now we propose a total commitment of $2.3 billion dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for travel sector. Licensed travel agents and passenger service operators will be offered 100% loan guarantee to obtain commercial loans to help them tide over this time, and also hire people and conduct necessary maintenance and inspection to complement the pace of resumption of inbound and outbound tourism activities. Now the details have been listed out. I will not repeat them. The operational details are based on the existing SME loan guarantee financing scheme. Now there are 2 points to make only. First, this dedicated loans guarantee scheme are independent from the SME loan guarantee scheme. If the applicant has obtained a loan under the former scheme, it will not affect the chance or the eligibility for the applicants to apply a loan under this current scheme as well as the cap of the loan. Now, second, to ensure speedy recovery, the principle of this loan guarantee scheme is simplicity. We would like to streamline the complicated procedures and spare the travel industry from them. We are striking a balance between recovery of the business and the feasibility. On the 25th of March, we have consulted the Tourism Commission and the scheme was supported by the trade. Now, besides this plan, we also have other supporting measures, including extending the 3-month encouragement scheme for another 3 months, and also making another injection to the recovery fund and also the heritage scheme as well. We have also enhanced the commitments to $100 million for the pilot scheme to enhance trade industry practitioners to enhance their quality. Now, we hope members would support this dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for the travel sector so that we can seek the FC's approval in April and launch the scheme right after that. Thank you.
我哋而家有
Four members are waiting to speak. I will read out their names. Dr. So Chang-Wing, Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Perry Yu, Mr. Holden Chow. 4 minutes for each member, questions and answers inclusive. If we have time left, we can do a second round. Dr. So, please. Chair, I speak in support of the dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for the travel sector. There's a pressing need in the travel sector. The maximum commitment is $2.3 billion. Is that enough to cover all the sector, all the operators in the sector? If you do not have enough money, then you're not being fair to everyone in the sector. I know there's keen demand for such help in the sector. The default rate is estimated to be 25%. How can the government ensure the default rate will not go beyond this 25% mark? The government, please. We set the maximum commitment at $2.3 billion. We have considered the number of travel agencies, their scale of operations. So we are assuming everyone applies when we come up with this maximum commitment. There are also large coach operators. There will be a maximum of 300 million for the operators. So we have set aside enough money to cover everyone in the sector. And for the default rate, that's the estimate we provide in our funding proposal to the Finance Committee. Because once we have a default, the government has to pick up the bill. Banks will be involved in keeping an eye on the repayment. And then measures were taken to monitor the repayment in line with industry norms. My colleague, Mr. Chen, will have more to say on this. In paragraph 12 of the paper, some measures are set out. The borrower has to meet some requirements. For the lending banks, they will also report the repayment of the borrowers to the credit reference agencies. The banks and we will keep an eye on the scheme as it is rolled out. Any follow-up questions? No. Next, Mr. Frankie Yik. I'm sure the Secretary is aware that Mr. Perry Yu and I have been asking for a recovery fund for the travel sector. This is for the buses, ships, and operators. Once you resume the cross-boundary travel, you need repairs, but there's no recovery fund. The loan scheme is better than nothing. We support this scheme and we welcome this scheme. In paragraph 5 of the paper, application period is 6 months from the launch date, and it can be extended if needed. The funding proposal will go to the Finance Committee in April. But I believe the 6-month window is too short. We don't have enough workers in Hong Kong. There's a serious shortage of workers. Fixing this problem takes time. If the operators cannot hire drivers, they will not take their buses to repairs. So please do something about the time limit. We all want enough capacity to receive inbound visitors. So that's my first point. The second point, monitoring and the safeguards of the loans. There are concerns in the sector. They wonder if they are eligible, that is, people in the sector. Now, there's a requirement saying that this borrower cannot be in debt. But then people in the sector have had no income for years. They may have bank loans. They may be a couple of months in arrears in their payments. So they have a bank loans, but they are not listed as bad loans. They're still repaying those bank loans. Will they be ineligible for the scheme here? We're keeping an eye on the recovery of the travel sector. There will be a 6-month window for application. So the scheme comes out in April, and then the application window will go all the way to October. We're closely watching the situation. For this scheme, we believe a 6-month window for application is enough. The repayment period can be 10 years. So people in the sector can take out the loan and they have 10 years to repay the loan. That's a lot of time. On eligibility, there's a 60-day requirement. If the borrower is in debt, the debt is outstanding for more than 60 days and it's not repaid, then this person is ineligible. The bank will consider the circumstances of each applicant. Now, of course, people in business take out loans all the time, but they have to repay their loans. It's the repayment that matters. So can I confirm with the secretary? Can I just let the people I know in the sector know that as long as they keep repay their loans, and even if there are some delays in repayments, they are still eligible? Can I tell my sector this is the case? We have to look at things on a case-by-case basis. The point is that the borrower cannot be in arrears in debt payments for more than 60 days. Say the repayment has to be 100 days. The minimum repayment is $10, but then the borrower is only paying back $1. Now, I cannot generalize all cases because there may be specific circumstances with each case. The commissioner for tourism can come in here. Now, as long as this person has no outstanding debt within 60 days before the application, that person is eligible. So the applicant can make some arrangements before applying for the scheme. Well, it would be nice if they could actually make that work. But the principle is like this. The principle is that the borrower cannot have defaulted debt claims. Mr. Perry, you. The government's proposal is a scheme for the travel sector, a 100% loan guarantee scheme to help the sector meet liquidity crunch. The sector welcomes the proposal, but as Mr. Frankie Yik was saying, the travel sector has been saying we need a recovery fund. There are two parts to the fund. First, to address the liquidity issue, and second, we need subsidies to help the sector hire experienced workers and also repair the buses and ships. But then we know there are financial reasons and all other kinds of reasons the government has decided not to take on board our suggestion. Now there's only the 100% loan guarantee scheme. We welcome the scheme. But then we believe the sector is not doing enough to support our sector. There's a long way to go in our recovery. The application period will be 6 months. Can the government be flexible about this 6-month period? Can we see full recovery by the end of 2023? We're not certain if we can make that work. There may be liquidity issues further down the road, so a hard and fast limit or window may not be ideal. Now, there will be a principal moratorium, 12-month moratorium. Can we have a payment holiday instead? So not even interest payment. That could really help the travel sector. Or can we have a principal moratorium over 24 months? Can the government do that? Chair, we're talking about a 10-year repayment period. For any sector, you have a low interest loan and a long repayment period over 10 years. Those arrangements are really a help for the sector. Of course, the more help, the better, but then we have to strike a balance. This is a 10-year repayment period. And then there is the 12-month principal moratorium. So that means an even longer repayment period. The 6-month window is for application. For someone who has no need to apply for the loan within 6 months, how likely is that this applicant will need more funding after that window? We're not asking the applicants to repay after 6 months. We're saying 6 months is enough for an applicant to make up their mind on whether they need the loan. And then we can also review how the recovery goes and consider what to do at that point. Any follow-up questions? Secretary, the sector is very cautious in taking out loans. They make sure they can repay before taking out the loans. Taking out loans is a last resort for them. So can we have a longer window for the sector to consider whether to take out the loans? If we can do that, that would be nice. We note the member's comment. The sector can start considering this matter now. We still need electrical support for the scheme. The financial secretary announced the scheme in February, and then when the application window closes, that will be October. So that's a lot of time for operators to consider whether they need the loan. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. This is a loan guarantee scheme for the travel sector to help them with the recovery over the rough patch. I speak in support of the scheme. The paper here says that the mortgage corporation is involved. The participating lending institutions will also take part in the approval process. So I have a question about how it works. Say you have an applicant. An application comes in. The repayment period will be over 10 years. The lending institutions take part in the approval process. But say the applicant fails to repay the money. And then the lending institutions make a call on the loans when circumstances change. During economic downturns, say over the past couple of years, we talked to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. The lending institutions need to be very careful before making calls on loans because that could easily trigger a domino effect. That's why this matter needs to be approached with caution. Now, for this loan guarantee scheme, the primary responsibility falls on the participating lending institutions. So, on making calls on the loans, what will be done?
Thank you. May I invite the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the HAMC Insurance Limited, Mr. Clement Chan, to talk about this. Thank you. I want to reassure Mr. Holden Chow that that won't be the case. Now, for the participating institutions, they will be the one to vet the applications. Now, when the applications are approved, the participating lending institution would sell the loan to the HAMC Insurance Limited. So there would be no credit risk to the participating institutions at all. So when the loan is drawn, the participating institutions would only handle the administrative arrangements in terms of repayment. So it won't be the case when a bank judges that the credit risk is too high and the loan would be recalled. As long as the applicant is still making payments, then the loan can go on. Now, just a follow-up question. Since the loan itself has been sold to the HAMC Insurance Limited, since the government would be the guarantor, according to what you said, even if there is a default, say a failure to make repayments for a certain period of time, the situation I mentioned would not happen at all. Sorry for being long-winded because we want to be sure about the operational details. Now, under a normal situation, the banks would not be the one to call the loans. If for any reason the debtor is unable to make repayments, since it would incur government expenditure, then we would discuss with the guarantor whether a restructuring of debts is needed. And for a last resort, the bank would call the loans, but the situation you mentioned would not happen. Thank you. I want to add this. So for a more prudent bank, it would make a move if it identifies any risk at all. So because of the epidemic, we have been very concerned about this. So I am happy to hear that it would be with the HAMC Insurance Limited's authority to do so. Still, I understand that you would make judgments on each and every case to see if it is just a temporary failure to make repayments or whether the situation is still salvageable. Thank you. So that's all for the first round. I will draw a line now. We have come to the second round. Any members who would like to speak? If there's not anyone else, then I will invite Mr. Frankie Yik to speak. Me and Mr. Perry Yu share the same view. We want to request a more linear approach to deal with the application period, subject to the approval of the FC. We are not talking about the recovery of the tourism industry. The thing is, we don't have any drivers for our coaches. I don't think we can address the issue within 6 months. Without a driver, I would not take out a loan from you to fix my cars. Well, in 6 months' time, the business would be closed. So I just want you to be lenient. Secretary, we will work with the Transport Bureau. There is also a loan scheme under that bureau. Last week, they have consulted members at the relevant panel. That is for addressing the shortage of drivers. We will work with them on your question. Of course, we are working very closely with the Transport and Logistics Bureau to address the shortage of drivers. Now, drivers above age 60 cannot drive as coach bus, cannot be coach bus drivers to the mainland. So that's what we are trying to address. Now, the loan scheme for cross-boundary coaches falls under the purview of the Transport Bureau. So that's why I said we have to talk with them. Well, anyway, let's work together. Let's just be flexible. Mr. Perry Yu, thank you. Just a follow-up on Mr. Frankie Yick's point. He mentioned about the shortage of cross-boundary passenger coaches drivers. Well, for driver license under A01 category, the coaches are still idling, and when there are no drivers, the operators will not maintain and fix their buses. That's the case for the A01 endorsement. So when they will only obtain a loan when they get a driver. So I hope the 6-month application period can be flexible. For transport, for the travel industry as well, that's the same problem. Now, transport is transport, tourism is tourism, I understand, but anyway, we will work this out with the TLB. So if there is no other question, I would like to ask members whether you support the government submitting this program for the FC for further consideration. Unanimous support. Thank you. That's the end of this item. Thank you very much. Item 6, any other business? If there is no AOB, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.